Excited about today's show because I have a very special guest with me today, Danielle Walker. Many of you know her. She's had 3 best-selling, New York Times best-selling books before, and her latest, just out December 4th, is this one, Eat What You Love. And the title says it all because it's about healthy comfort food, which a lot of people think is an oxymoron.
Right, yes, they think it's impossible.
And so I want to get to your story, which if you don't know Danielle, it's fascinating. Long story short, you had a terrible autoimmune disease, and you figured out that if you changed your diet, that it would help you, and boom, it's gone. And this is the story that we know with so many other people who struggle with the various autoimmune diseases. We're going to get to that too, but I'm sure our viewers are looking at this and saying, what is all that food? So first of all, tell us why you decided to make this cookbook, and then tell us about these wonderful dishes.
Yeah, well, so after writing the first 3 and just continuing to develop recipes, I found that I was missing, and that also my readers and my fans were still missing, those comfort foods, the family favorite recipes, the recipes that they have, you know, scribbled out on a note card from their grandma, the things that they remember learning how to cook growing up with their, you know, mom or their dad or their aunt and uncle, just those, you know, those things that you just have such memories of. And there were a lot of recipes still that I kept getting requests for. And so I said, okay, it's time to do kind of a comfort food cookbook. And then as we started to put the book together, we went through lots of different titles, but as we were looking through the recipes, the thing that just kept coming up in my head was, you can still eat the food you love and not feel like you're deprived, but also not feel like you're sacrificing your health. And then for my biggest concern as well is not sacrificing the flavors and the textures that are familiar with those foods.
And I'm one of the millions of people who feels like when it comes to your diet, it's either or.
Yes.
You have to eat comfort food or something that's good for you. And the idea that comfort food and is healthy is brand new.
Yes.
And you have figured out a way to do it. And you know, what I love about you, and this is a great tip, is don't tell people that they're eating food that is healthy. Because they're going to get an idea in their head ahead of time that it's not going to taste good. So don't tell them it's gluten-free. Don't tell them it's dairy-free. Don't tell them there's no sugar in it. And they won't know.
No, they won't. And that's always my goal, because yes, we do. We kind of have these preconceived notions, and people's brains shut themselves down to enjoying it if they get to hear all of the free of, you know, beforehand. And we so often apologize for things before people have even had a chance to experience it. So I say, wait, bring them into your table, gather people around, let them feast, let them eat, and then if you want to afterwards, or they ask, you know, oh wow, this tasted so great, what was in it? Then you can go into the, you know, all of the nuances.
Deceived.
Yes. It's like, okay, pass the test. Now I can tell you that I lied to you. No, I'm just
you know, the great chef Julia Child once said a version of what you're saying is, no matter what you're cooking, whether it's healthy or not, don't ever apologize for your food when you bring it out to your guests and they say, oh, it's lovely. And don't say things like, oh, well, I overcooked it. Oh, well, it really shouldn't look like that, or because people don't know.
No, they don't, and it's so true. You set something down, and we just immediately start kind of, you know, oh, it's too cold, or I overbaked it, or just let them enjoy it, you know, and then if you want to discuss it afterwards, you can.
Right. So tell us what we have here.
So we have a sampling of some of my favorite make-ahead breakfast options, actually. All of these things can be put in the freezer, which is so essential when you are having to use real food ingredients. It does take a little more time in the kitchen. It's just, you know, there's no skirting around that. So we have everything bagels, which are nut-free, they're grain-free, gluten-free, you know, all of that. And I make these, I make a couple dozen at a time. I put them in the freezer, and then I can pull them out for either breakfast, or if I'm hosting people for breakfast, you know, to be able to pull out a dozen of them and have them on hand. They also make really great sandwiches, which when you've gone gluten-free or paleo, a sandwich is kind of, well, it's a lettuce wrap is what it is. And so it's kind of nice every once in a while.
So these are gluten-free everything bagels. And can I just tell you, when I'm driving past the bagel store, I hear this voice coming from the bagel store saying gluten-free bagel. I'm like, no. Now I know we can have these.
Yes, exactly. And they're, you know, I mean, they're like light. They're great.
All right, we're going to take a real quick break and come back and talk about the other food on this table, what it has and what it does not have. All right, Danielle Walker is our guest today on Healthy Living. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Healthy Living, and our guest today is Danielle Walker, author of the new cookbook, Eat What You Love, and it's all about healthy comfort food. Bet you didn't know that there was such a thing. We just talked about the everything bagels that are gluten-free, and really all the recipes in here are gluten-free and dairy-free and paleo-friendly.
That's right. Yeah.
And also you have recipes that can convert to Instant Pot.
Yes.
Crock pot, and regular old pots and pans.
Yep, all of the above, plus sheet pan meals where you're putting all of the protein and veggies on a sheet pan and putting it into the oven. One pan meals. Those are the things that get us through on the weeknights.
And you know, I love how you talk about making things ahead of time.
Yeah.
When you have time to cook, make a great big huge batch of it and throw it in the freezer. And you talked about doing that with the everything bagels. You know, a lot of people have difficulty freezing baked goods. How do you do that without it having the freezer burn on it?
Yes, so there's a few tips that I think go across the board, but grain-free baked goods actually freeze pretty well, which is really nice. But you want to make sure that they are cooled completely, because usually what happens with freezer burn is if they're warm and you put them in the freezer, they have some condensation, and then that settles back on the food as ice. So if they're very nice and cooled and then they're wrapped really tightly, that's kind of the other tip. And then you should avoid the freezer burn.
Wrapped really tightly with like saran wrap,
Yeah,
or do you need to get one of those vacuum sealer things?
No, I don't have one of those. I'm sure it would be nice, but I just do saran wrap, or you know, a zip tight bag where you press all the air out, or a glass Tupperware where it has those snap tight kind of tops to it. Those all work really well.
Okay, great, fantastic.
Yes.
So the everything bagels look spectacular,
Yes.
great for sandwiches as well as breakfast. This is all breakfast food.
Yes, this is all breakfast, just because, you know, it's that time of the year where you want to make some health commitments, but you also may not have a ton of time. And breakfast, I feel like, is the meal that is so often kind of just either forgotten or where you're eating things that are unhealthy because they're easy to grab and go.
Right, right. And I just want to plug the book again. You have the most fantastic recipes in here, and they're all comfort food. And, you know, we all have these emotional connections with comfort food. And you have shepherd's pie in here, which is so near and dear to my heart. I know that was one of the first things I ever learned how to cook.
Same here.
And then my daughter, when she went out on her own, it's the phone call every mother loves, which she says, "Mom, how do you make that shepherd pie?" Because she was making it for her boyfriend and trying to impress him. And it's so nice that there's a healthy version of that. And you've got all these other classic macaroni and cheese. Is there anything better than macaroni and cheese as far as a healthy comfort food?
Yeah, there's chicken and dumplings and chicken pot pie. You know, just it's all those old family favorites.
And desserts as well. But we're talking about breakfast food, and these are chocolate donuts.
Yes.
What?
Yes. Talk about something that I have memories tied to. My grandparents used to take us on donut dates when we'd see them, or if I was at church, I would use my offering money and put it in the donut basket, you know, so that you could get a donut. So donuts were something I loved eating growing up, and they were always a treat. So I wanted to be able to have them. I have 3 young kids, and so creating something like that where I could share those traditions with them was really important to me.
And so talk about these donuts in particular. What's in them and what's not in them? They look absolutely delicious.
Yes, so they're chocolate. In the book, there's actually homemade sprinkles so that you don't have any food dyes in there. So you just make them. They're really easy to make.
Really?
But it's kind of a fun craft during the day. And there's coconut flour in there, and no grains, no dairy, no refined sugar. You don't want to eat this every meal, but it's still a very nice treat to have.
And you know, you brought up a good point too about going gluten-free. A lot of people don't have gluten issues or think they don't have gluten issues, but when they try going without gluten for a while, they notice they have so much more energy. The brain fog has lifted. Their joints don't hurt anymore, and they didn't realize how gluten was affecting them. You don't have to have celiac disease to be semi-gluten intolerant.
Not at all. I think there's a statistic that's like 1 in 4 have a gluten intolerance but don't know it, and 50 million Americans have autoimmune disease and could benefit from eating gluten-free.
And we're going to talk about autoimmune diseases after we go through the list of foods. So these are wonderful donuts.
Thank you.
Talk about these muffins right here.
So these are Morning Glory muffins. They're packed full of all different sorts of things. There's pineapple and carrots and some sunflower seeds on top. Coconut flour again, which is really high in fiber. So these are a really wonderful thing to pull out of your freezer if you're busy on a school morning or work morning. And they're so full of protein and fat that they'll actually keep you really satiated until lunch.
I'm sure your kids really love that.
They do.
They do. I love how you have colorful little paper wrappers around them as well. So we're going to be back with Danielle Walker right after this commercial break. The book is Eat What You Love. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healthy Living. My guest is Danielle Walker, author of the new cookbook, Eat What You Love. And these are all recipes that are paleo-friendly, gluten-free, dairy-free, oh so healthy, none of those awful preservatives and things in them. And you were talking about these, specifically these are breakfast foods, and you talked about the everything bagels, the muffins, the chocolate donuts, and this is a wonderful parfait. Tell us about this.
So there's a smoothie on the bottom. I use acai in there, which is really high in antioxidants. And then we have a chia seed pudding that has coconut milk on top. So the best thing that I like to do with these is I actually put them into little mason jars and put lids on them. You can make them over the weekend, and then you can just grab one and go. Sometimes I'll eat them in the carpool line with drop off for school, or if I have to run into the office. And so these are really wonderful because they're so full of healthy fats and protein that, again, kind of like those muffins that keep you really full until lunchtime. You know, those really high sugary breakfasts, you find yourself hungry by 10 o'clock, right?
And they're so bad for the kids.
Right, so bad for the kids. So this is really wonderful because it's sweet, but there's no actually added sweeteners in there. It's just from the fruit.
And chia seeds are some of the healthiest types of food, and chia seed is one of the healthiest foods you can eat, not just because of its nutritional value, but it kind of, if you're trying to lose weight, it sort of expands in your stomach and makes you feel really full.
That's what makes that pudding. Yeah, it kind of gives it that texture, which is so great. They start out as these little seeds, and as soon as you add some liquid, they just kind of absorb it all.
One note, though, about chia seeds is carry floss with you.
Oh my goodness, yes, that's true.
Chia seeds,
yeah,
they do tend to lodge.
They do. And if you don't like that crunchy texture, sometimes I just blend them up into the milk or the liquid, and then you actually get a very smooth pudding, which, so if you're not one of those ones that likes to kind of chew on those, then that's an option too.
I've never heard of that.
Yep.
And so you're saying that a lot of this food in particular, you can make it on the weekend and it will last all the way through Friday?
Yes, which is
in
so
the refrigerator.
Great. Yes, in the refrigerator. You could actually freeze this one too. These ones I freeze. This one you can keep in the refrigerator. As long as you're eating one a day, you'll be done with them by the end of the week, and you can make another batch.
This one right here, these little mini quiches look so filling. I love eggs.
Yes.
And they say pasture-raised eggs are the best type to buy. And I've noticed that the grocery stores have been starting to carry those, which is encouraging.
Yes.
What else is in this?
Yeah, so I have Swiss chard in there, so really great leafy greens that are high in iron. You could also do spinach, or you could do kale, whatever you want. And then some chives for flavor. Instead of heavy cream, which quiche usually has, I do coconut milk and almond milk. And then I throw some sausage or bacon in there, nitrate-free. You want organic if possible. But really, you could put whatever's in your fridge. There's also some sweet potatoes in there, so they are really, really packed full of really great nutritional food. But you can, if you have things that are in your crisper drawer that you just need to get rid of, throw it in there. That's what's so nice about them.
It's sort of like a Western omelet.
Yeah, it is a little bit.
With all the vegetables in it, and it looks like you made this in a muffin tin.
Exactly, yes. So that's what's nice because they're individual sizes, so if you're not going to be serving them right away, you can pack them up in the freezer and just pull out one or two as you need them, and then they can just stay in there, which is so wonderful.
Well, I'm sure your family loves this type of food, and you know, I noticed in your cookbook, not only do you have fantastic recipes, but you have some advice.
I do.
And one of the things that you already mentioned is don't tell people ahead of time that this is healthy food.
Right.
Because that turns people off.
Yep.
But then another thing you said is get the whole family involved. And you know, it's really hard for somebody who's in a family who's eating a certain way and then the others aren't.
Right.
And you know, this tempting food is just sitting right there on the table. It's just, you're just setting yourself up for failure.
Exactly, and you're isolating that child or that family member, which is really difficult, especially if they're doing this because of an autoimmune disease or some other sort of an ailment. You know, they already feel different from their peers or from their siblings. So, and to try to get the whole family on board just sets you up for more success.
And so also you talked, I thought was really interesting, you had an autoimmune disease. I mean, you had to eat this way.
Right.
And for a while, you were the only one in your family doing it. And your husband, you asked him to help you stay on your diet, on your healthy eating plan, and he would like reprimand you in public, and everybody thought he was like the biggest jerk.
Yes, they did. Oh my goodness. Yes, he would say, that's not on your diet. And people would look at him like, you are a monster trying to get your wife to diet. So we had to kind of switch the words around, and he would just say like, hey, that's not on your plan. He kept me on track, and honestly, he helped save my life, because if I wouldn't have ate this way and continued to do it, I would be so sick.
but you actually had sort of like a code word
Yeah.
for him to help you.
Yes,
so
I
that
think it
people-
was the plan. It was like, do not diet. We did like the plan so that, yeah, so people wouldn't give him the, evil eye.
The point is, and this is a serious point, is you do need support. Don't do it you're all alone. Have other people help you with
Yes,
it.
absolutely.
Well, we're going to take a quick break and be back with Danielle Walker, author of the wonderful cookbook, Eat What You Love, and we're going to talk about her story, which is fascinating, when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healthy Living. My special guest is Danielle Walker, author of the wonderful new cookbook, Eat What You Love. And we're talking about the reason, the inspiration behind this whole eating plan of yours that has really caught on like wildfire. This is a very personal story for you because you were diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, and it was really life-threatening.
Yes.
And then you discovered that if you changed your diet, the disease was under control.
Yes.
Fascinating.
Isn't that amazing? Yes.
Yes, and it's actually a little bit discouraging too because you had to sort of figure this out on your own. A doctor did not tell you this.
No, they did not. They actually denied that it would help and told me not to even try it. So yes, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis when I was 22. I just gotten married and graduated college, and I had not had any symptoms growing up. Nothing that would have maybe alerted us to it. It pretty much came on overnight. I spent weeks and weeks in hospitals. I was on 100 milligrams of prednisone steroids, which is incredibly debilitating. There was a point in time where I couldn't walk up the stairs. I had to take medical leave from my job. I would lose 20 to 30 pounds within a 2-week period. My hair was falling out. It was just, it was a lot.
And how did you discover that changing your diet would help you?
Yeah, well, so ulcerative colitis is in your colon, and I was young and I didn't go to med school or, I wasn't a dietitian, but something in my brain just said, there has got to be something that I'm eating because it's all going through there that might be making things worse. Or, maybe am I deficient in something? And so as the doctors kept saying, no, that doesn't help, I just kind of got online, honestly, and I started researching and Googling, autoimmune disease and diet and ulcerative colitis and diet. And at that point, it wasn't very prevalent for people to be eating a paleo diet. Even celiac was just starting to be recognized and diagnosed more. And so really it was a lot of chat boards. It was a lot of other people with my disease that had kind of stumbled upon it, and reading their testimonials was really what got me to think, oh, this could actually work. I'm going to give it a shot. Even though the doctors are saying don't, it couldn't hurt is what I thought. I was being faced with either having a portion of my colon removed or having a lifelong immunosuppressant administered through an IV every 6 weeks that would just cut my whole immune system out. And those, at such a young age, I wanted to be a mom, I wanted to continue working. That didn't really seem like an option to me. And food, at its very purest form, unprocessed, the way I feel like it was created to be enjoyed, felt like it wasn't that big of a risk if we just tried it for 30 days to see if it would work. And thankfully it did, and I was able to avoid all of those other drastic measures.
What did you do? Did you immediately go off of gluten and then dairy, just those two things, and then you stopped with the processed food, which contains a lot of chemicals and also sugar?
Right, yes. So it was a process, and it was a mental process for me too. It wasn't easy, I mean, I grew up in an Italian family that loved to get together around food. I had all these dreams of being able to cook all these things, and so it took a while for me to even commit. I would kind of dabble in it, and I'd see a bit of improvement, and then I'd go back or I'd eat something off of somebody's plate. And so I went gluten-free first, and then it kind of morphed and continued to grow into grain-free, dairy-free, paleo. I did an elimination diet. I worked with a naturopathic doctor and kind of helped me figure out what foods might be trigger foods for me. And after going on that elimination diet, my symptoms improved by 75% within 48 hours. It was pretty incredible, and it was really difficult after seeing such a correlation for me to want to go back to eating those foods, because I said, oh my goodness, like I have this glimmer of feeling well, and eating those foods will make me not feel well. So it was a lot easier once I really saw that to kind of keep forging ahead.
It is actually shocking how much our diet affects our health. I don't think people realize it.
No, I don't think they do, unfortunately. It's growing, and I'm not, I'm seeing it more and more, and some doctors are starting to kind of do some research into it. But yes, it is incredible the things that we put into our bodies and how you know, even just like you said, with joint pain or not sleeping well or that brain fog, I think so often people just think that that's normal and they just live with it and they just kind of are like, oh, this is my normal. But I don't feel like that's the way our bodies were created to live. I think we should be thriving more. And I think, you know, you have to start looking at your symptoms and your food and realizing like, this is not the normal I want. I don't want to live. I don't want to live like this.
And you had ulcerative colitis. That is an autoimmune disease.
Right.
There are a number of autoimmune diseases, Graves' disease and Hashimoto's thyroiditis.
Yes.
And
MS.
Talk about have you heard from people with other types of autoimmune diseases?
Yes, it's incredible. I mentioned before, 50 million Americans, there's hundreds of autoimmune diseases. So MS, rheumatoid arthritis, I mean, you probably know somebody with some sort of an autoimmune condition in your sphere of people. And it has been incredible to hear the testimonials of people. You know, I have over 1.5 million people that come to my website a month that are using this for various forms of autoimmune conditions that are finding health and healing through it.
Well, we're almost out of time, but I wanted to talk specifically about one of your recipes, and this is near and dear to my heart, bone broth.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Bone broth. Now, I love this because this actually does help repair your intestines,
Right.
and this is the leaky gut syndrome,
Yes.
which is really at the root of so many
Yes.
autoimmune diseases. Talk about how important bone broth is.
Yeah, it was one of those things that I didn't understand the importance of when I first started. But it's incredibly healing to your gut. It contains collagen and gelatin, so it's really great for the lining of your gut to heal something like a leaky gut. It also has just really wonderful nutrients in it that are kind of extracted from boiling those bones. And you know, the way that I think about it is when your grandmother made you soup when you were sick, she didn't pour a can of chicken broth, right? She boiled those bones and she made stock from scratch.
I remember.
And that's why it's so much more healing because it has all of those nutrients in it. And so, yes, it is something that I incorporate into my diet daily. I either drink a mug of it or I have it in soup, but I always keep it in the freezer. I actually freeze my bone broth in a similar silicone muffin mold and pop them into a freezer bag or container so that I can have them all the time.
Well, the bone broth recipe is in the new book, Eat What You Love. Danielle Walker, you are an inspiration. Thank you so much for paving the way and for coming up with these marvelous recipes.
Thank you.
So people can eat healthier.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful to be here.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson, and we'll see you again next time.